Hey, welcome. This is Jelle growing bonsai and we are looking at an elm root over rock bonsai. I'm going to unwrap it. I'm going to check whether the roots can be exposed to the air. I'm going to prune back the roots. I'm going to prune back this tree and take a massive cutting, all in this video. And this time the video will be a little bit different from normal. In normal videos I take care to cut out airplanes that pass over, cut out sentences that are mumbly. I try to have a clear speech, a clear message, and all the uhs and ahs are cut out. Now I have had some requests on my channel for a long video. One where I just do bonsai. Well, guess what? That is this video. This video is going to be very long. I think this process is going to take half an hour, 45 minutes, and I'm going to tape all of it. I'm not going to cut anything out. I'm just going to put it online as is. I might move the camera every once in a while to show you a few close-ups, but that's it. That's all I'm going to do editing wise. So let's see whether you do like this. Now this elm I grew from cutting, about this size. Planted it on top of this rock 4 years ago, I think. I've used a sacrifice branch here on the back to create the first line of the trunk. Then I allowed this to grow, and now the root here is so fat that I am concerned it is actually not good for the tree anymore. So the first thing I'm going to do, unwrap this. Well, actually no, this I'm not going to keep. It has fattened up this base. I actually wanted to slowly reduce the strength with which it grows, so I'm going to remove it. Easier said than done? No, as easy said as done. In this case I'm going to leave a little bit of a stump because I'm going to do root work. It is still very early in the year. I don't think this tree will have dieback, but you never know, right? I could have of course used a scissor to cut it off, but now the edge is nice and smooth, and I'm just going to chuck this in a bit of water so it can root. I'll reduce the length so it is a little bit more stable in the pot. This time of year I'm not sure whether I'm already too late for rooting these cuttings, but this elm has a very nice bark, so I'm just going to keep it. And in fact everything that's now falling on the ground I'll also chuck in some water. Now I'm going to pause the camera for a second because I need to get the water. I didn't bring the water with me. I forgot that I was going to do this. And these are the sort of things that I normally would cut out, right? Me diving to the ground and looking for all these things that have fallen. But this is a whole handful of corkbark elm cuttings. If they root, I'll pop them on an auction site, or maybe I'll just advertise them on my channel. Let me get some water and put it in. Now I have come to the conclusion that putting it in water overnight, in this case it's going to be a few nights, will make a bit of a jelly at the base of these cuttings, and with it it roots a little bit better. It is still frosty, so I'm going to put it in the shed. That is in the shed. Now let's take a look here. First of all I need to remove a bit of these weeds, because the pot is actually covered with a mesh so that the birds can't pull the substrate out. And also here, this mesh here sits here, of course, that the birds can't pull roots out. They really like to dig in this aluminium foil. This aluminium foil, of course, holds the roots against the rock, keeps humidity up, and with that I hope that I get better roots. Now these roots have dried out and matured quite well, but what you see, this is one big root. I've cut it back here. You can't actually see it from there, I think. Let me change the camera angle again so you can actually see the base. This all needs to come out. And now my camera is not autofocused, so I'm not sure whether you can actually still get a focused image, but this should work. Just like that. So this has been cut here at the base and it's created a few smaller roots, but I'm still not very happy with it. And now I'm just going to remove some of these weeds and pull the whole rock out of the pot and look at these roots and see how they are doing. Now it is still early in the year, you can tell that the buds have not really swollen, but I have a few hundred trees, Some of you have asked me to do a bench tour. No, I'm not going to do a bench tour because I find those horribly boring. But yeah, with so many trees, I need to start early. If you have fewer trees, just wait until the buds are about to open, or when you see the first little green peeking through, then you know the tree is really awake. This is an elm. I'm not too concerned. Well, welcome to Airport Central. I live next to an airport. Airplanes keep passing by here during my days in the garden. Right, all the weeds are gone. Now, how do you get a rock? How do you get these root over rocks out of a pot? That's always a difficult question. I typically just gently lift them out. Nice, solid matted roots. That's always a good sign. Did I bring a root hook? Yes, I brought a root hook. Always useful. So now ideally there's no roots outside of the aluminium, but here you can see why it has gotten so big. It has grown out of the foil, and therefore this one has much more energy than the rest. This is something that I was worried about that was happening. But hey, it's out of the pot. Can now fix it and either wrap it up with new aluminium foil or not. Actually considering leaving it out of the soil with the part that's now uncovered, and then just planting it up back into the substrate with just the base in the soil. Now the aluminium foil somehow deteriorates a little bit over time. If you know why, drop me a line in the comments. It is a lot weaker than when it was first put in place. Can't imagine it oxidizes, but it must be something like that. That's funny. That's the mesh. I didn't connect the mesh properly to the pot. I just pulled the mesh out. I was thinking, what am I feeling down there? You may have seen my repotting video, and in the repotting video I tell you why I put it on an elevation. This is really just to make sure the substrate falls down. Not sure whether you can hear me and understand me while I'm working, but well, we'll see. This is a trial video, right? If you don't like it at all, you can also just pop a comment. I hate this style video, don't do this again. It really would help me. So now I don't want any of these big roots, so I can also just go around and start pruning off anything that is big. There's a lot of circling roots at the bottom. Want to get rid of all of those. Which in the end, these big roots, they don't aid in good root mass development. It's the fine roots that we want in the end. So this is the process that you normally see. Either I cut it out, or I showed in a very high speed. Because these are somewhat boring parts of the bonsai journey. But it is core to the process, right? Cleaning out the root balls. The aim, of course, with the root over rock is that these roots get a good grasp on the rock. And that's why they need to grow out for a long time, so that these really start to fuse with the rock, and you can move the rock and the tree as one combination. I think I've reached that state with this one, so that's very positive. And here is a very big mat of roots. I do like where this combination is going. It really has now become a nice creation, and it is very nicely connected to the rock. Now it's time to be gentle, because one sudden move and a lot of weight or pressure on one of the roots can mean that you still dislodge the whole thing. So I now gently have to go around, pruning short all these roots. It doesn't after all need all these roots to survive. It's early spring, it will regrow roots quite quickly. The amount of roots that I'm now removing of course was foreseen, which is why I left a little stump when I pruned the main trunk. Now normally I spend quite a bit of time editing my videos, maybe 3-4 hours for each video is spent on editing and cutting out what I don't want to say or realigning the story, so that for you it's easier to follow what I do when and why. You don't have that advantage now. So if it comes across as a little bit chaotic, yeah, hey, if you ask me to create a long video without a lot of editing, this is what you get. I think I've got most of the roots from the side here. Now here, clean this off. It's tricky. Can't get a good hold on it. But as I'm still developing it, I also don't want to use my root hook too much. I don't want to put pressure on these roots that are still grasping the rock. Now there's all these roots below. You see, things do go wrong here as well. All this here I don't like. Don't know where they come from. I do know they form a mat of roots. There we go. Right. There we go. So this is where we're at. There's a nice clump of roots here that I can still shorten. There's nice roots on this side, and this is actually, I think, going to be the front of the composition. So what it looks like in the back is not all that important, but the root in the back is important because it really makes sure that you clasp the rock. Now if I look at this, it is actually mature enough for me to put it in a nicer pot than the one it was growing in. There's still a few small roots here that I really want to grow out, but planting it shallow will also do that. So let me go in my shed and look for a rock and look for a pot that is suitable sized. During this process I'm just going to leave the camera off. I'm not going to take you in my shed looking for pots because it's way too dark there. And I'll be right back. But I promise I won't work on the tree while you're not watching. I think that's okay. Now I found a pot. It's a pot from Ibuki Bonsai, Marius Volda, and it has 5 drainage holes. So the first step is of course to take these pieces of mesh and connect them to the drainage holes. And to do that I make, I call them glasses. Basically you take a piece of wire and you make one loop, you make a second loop. The space should be big enough to fit within the hole, and I fold them sideways, and then you have, well, it looks like glasses, right? You can just squeeze those through one of your meshes that you want to connect to the hole, and then you take the hole, you push the glasses through and you fold the ends out, and then the first mesh is connected. And this is what I now need to do 5 times, and yeah, that's going to be a little bit boring. I also have builder's mesh that is used when you're building walls with drywall, and at the seams they put this mesh that avoids cracking of the plaster later on. Nice thing there is it is self-adhesive, so you can just paste them over a hole. But yeah, that is not the perfect way of doing it. This is how you should be doing it. Ow, don't break anything. To tell you it's cold. We had 3 degrees of frost, so that is -3 Celsius. That would be about 26 Fahrenheit last night. And everything is really at a freezing point, including my fingers. So I'm going to drop things today probably. Please let me not drop the pot. That's 3. 2 more. This is a little bit long. Again, my fingers are really cold. I don't have enough feeling to do this carefully. You see me dropping things here. I've got a nice big waste area here underneath the table with the mesh over it. So every once in a while I just take the mesh off, pull all the waste out. It's not that I just throw it randomly in the garden. There's a little bit of system in the madness here. Right. Now, in case you are also about to repot and you really have no idea where to start, I know it is daunting if you do this for the first time. I would recommend find somebody who's experienced. Now again, families passing by might pop in some music if they decide to spend some time in front of my house. They sometimes do that. They like the nice plants in our front yard. It's all people in the neighborhood are on a hike. They pass by the house. Don't know why they always come here this far out of everything. Maybe because it is far away from everything. The dog is locked away, so hopefully, so the dog can come in and disturb us with a lot of noise. Also when people pass by with dogs. Actually, I'm thinking about putting it without a wire. The rock is going to be very heavy. It's going to be staying in place by itself, and I don't really know how to tie it down with the rock. I'll just use one wire, just for one side of the rock. But effectively it's all going to be so heavy, I don't think it will need a wire. And I really don't know how I'm going to tie this in. Normally it's used 2 wires, of course, to hold the tree in place, to make sure it doesn't fall over. But with a very heavy tree, maybe you don't need to. The challenge I have is, of course, there's 2 holes here, but they're quite near the side, so the rock won't be held in place. Like this, it is going to go all the way over, so I don't know what it is going to be useful at all, to be honest. Let's see. Now, substrate wise, I need to go look for some substrate. I didn't even try whether this would fit. So this is then roughly the idea, right? Actually, I said the other side was the front, so roughly like this will be the idea. I think that's going to look really, really nice. But how am I going to connect this? If this goes like this, and plant it over like this, behind this root, yeah, there's still a bit of space. Then I can wire it like this, and then it's at least connected. Right, let me finish cleaning off this root wall and find some substrate. As before, I don't want to pull the plant from the rock, so I'm quite conscious then I might have to leave some of these roots in place in this repot, and next time, as it has aged, I might be able to remove more. Furthermore, my scissors have gone really blunt because I've been cutting through the pumice here, and I need to sharpen them if I want to do more, but I don't think I want to. I want to really give this a little bit more time to age. It really is not completely connected yet, but it's good enough for now. Right. So meanwhile I found some substrate. What I'm using is the pumice. There is some diatomaceous earth in there. There is some zeolite in there. There's some fake lava. Basically ground up hydro grain. That's basically the main substrate. There's a little bit of pine bark. But as this is recycled, I always add a little bit more. This increases the amount of water that is retained. And I tell myself it aids in beneficial bacteria, beneficial fungal spores. It just creates a better root environment. Right. Now, normally what I would do is my battery is also going to die, so I'm going to switch off. Now, normally I'd say add a layer of substrate at the bottom of the pot. But in this case I'm not going to. I want the rock to sit as flat as possible on the base. And now I really need to figure out how am I going to attach this, because this is actually a much better position than down there. Do I have something to put underneath here? Just a tiny little pebble. Yeah, maybe a bit of the pumice that I just pulled out of the pot. This of course is a little bit of engineering, if you will, to get things stable in a pot. Does it now sit? I think it sits more or less stable. And now I'm just pulling this one through. A hole between the rock and the root. Just like this. To hold it in place. It's not pretty. But in 2 or 3 years time I think it will in itself stay in place, because then the roots will have formed a nice smooth surface below the rock that I can just cut back to. But as said, this year it still needs to stabilize a little bit, but this is stable enough. Also the chopstick I don't really need, because I didn't open the root ball very much on this repot. Really curious to see how this develops over this year. Below the rock, of course, it's important to get sufficient substrate. Now here is a very small root. I'd really like this to develop, but I'm not sure whether it will survive. We'll see. is wobbly, that's for sure. But we'll see. I'm going to fill the pot up quite high so that as it settles, the substrate, yeah, basically, I don't know, what am I going to say? This is one of those moments where normally I just first think about talking and then talking. Basically by putting more substrate in, as it settles, it sinks down further in the pot and it's not straight away that the roots are uncovered. So I'm going to fill it up quite far. And now one single thing that I do with most of my repots, as I'm nearing filling it up completely, I start tapping the pot. The substrate that I use is quite dry, and tapping will aid in it settling in, very clearly showing where there's any holes that I need to fill. Annoying sound, I know. With this it already is compacted a little bit, it settles in a little bit better. And after this it's of course important to water the whole thing. And then I'll look at pruning the canopy, because that's also not nice and balanced. This root here I find important, but yeah, I can't predict what will live and what won't. Could of course add a layer of moss on top. I typically don't, to be honest. But maybe for this root over rock I will, and then I'll add a bit of mesh over it, otherwise the birds will come and collect it within days. Yes, even now the birds have already started to act upon their urge to build a nest, and that's what they use it for. And to be honest, I can't blame them. We are invading on their territory, not the other way around. Let me just get some moss. And sphagnum is a protected species, it's very rare in our region, so I have a bucket of it sitting here that is just growing continuously, and that's where I get my moss. And as said, here below the rock it's important that also the substrate arise for the stability. Now I can just take the moss and say, well, this is where I find root development is important, and these areas I really want to keep moist and don't want them to dry out too quickly. Just cover them a little bit, and later in summer I can just remove it. I'm very sorry about all the airplanes. This is the reason why I do so much editing and why my videos take 3 times as long to record than the actual work needed. There we go. I have this cover. It's not pretty, but it does work. Add some music on top and filter out this horrible chopper passing over. It's very old. I should actually replace it at some point, but it will do its job for the next couple of months, and then over summer maybe I don't need it anymore if this settles in properly. It really is just a protection that the birds don't get to it before it all settles in. Something like this. Now, last stage is of course cutting it back, and for this we need to look at the front more or less. For you that's roughly on this side, and this is going to be my top of the tree. Here you can see a wound that has started to heal. That's a previous branch that I mentioned in the beginning, but it means that this is way too heavy as a top, and in fact this much too heavy. And this I don't want to compete. This should actually be coming a little bit towards us. In the back I don't want these long branches. These can stay. This is quite long. Downwards is favored. Here the sideways is favored. This is quite long. And I think with this tree is very nearly done. And then of course later in the season I'm going to have to wait for this chopper to pass again because it's really noisy. Maybe I can find a little piece of metal here. I have some wire always here, and I can then connect this part, hook it around, and in the front connect it also. You wouldn't believe how these birds get everything. Right, this has started to connect, this has started to close over. So this scar will very soon not be visible anymore. You have some nice roots going down. They are still a little bit covered, but over summer I can just remove this. The big root has lost 80% of the side roots, so that won't fatten up as quickly anymore. This over summer I'm going to cut back quite deep, so that it can also heal. And for the season I'm going to let this stop run. The same with this branch. It needs to be a lot heavier. I want it to sit really as a pad here. And I want a pad here, something to the front, and then the canopy. So this is never going to be a really big tree. I'm growing it slowly, I'm growing it in a pot, and as a result you see that the bark has very nice fissures. This is pretty much the whole repotting. As you can see, this stuff is all starting to fall apart, and I should really next time cut a new piece off, but we're wasting resources already as it is. So I like to minimize that when I do bonsai. Now, let me just water this down and be done with it. Now this is rainwater, so completely free from any contaminants. There's no calcium, there's no chlorine, there's nothing that is really a problem. Also because my pumps are switched off for winter. This is a pear bonsai. This is my trident forest. An elm that I'm growing out for a cascade. And I'm doing this actually in a quite interesting way. I've tilted the pot, or actually I've planted it in the wrong angle. So by the time that it's done, it's going to be like this. But right now this is the dominant branch, which will aid in flattening it. Yes, there's a video in the making, but we'll take another year. Right, that should do. And I typically water it once, and then I let it sit for a few minutes, and then I water a second time. I'll spare you the waiting of a couple of minutes, and just do this, and then finish off. And after that, I'll water it a second time. But both times I water until water starts really running from the bottom of the pot. This aids in getting all the fine material out of the substrate. Now this is going to go into the shed for another couple of days, and once the frost is over it can go outside. Right, and now the repotting is pretty much done. This tree is all settled in, it's watered. As said, I'm going to now just put it in a spot that's somewhat protected from the weather and let it grow again for a season or two. I think this is going to be a nice little bonsai, and I don't intend to get a really fat trunk on this. I want it to be a very small tree on a very big rock. So in consecutive repottings I might lift it a little bit up. I'm going to make tiny little feet to put under the rock, so the rock sits almost at substrate level, and you can really get the nebari to disappear into the ground from the rock, because now it is going to look a little bit odd, I think, once it is uncovered. But let's see. Let this grow for the season. I'll put it away, switch it off. Now if you like this style of video, let me know. If you want to know how to make a root over rock bonsai, watch that video. If you want to know more about propagating elms the way that I'm doing, have a look at that video. And otherwise, yeah, you have to wait for a couple of days for the next video to come out. This was Jelle growing bonsai. See you next time.